Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Electric Underground Podcast / Videocast, because there's a video element. So watch the damn video, people. And joining me today is a returning guest from the OG days of the Electric Underground Podcast when I was on SoundCloud and 150 people listened to the show. And he is back to follow up on the first interview. So in the first interview, we talked about his very first indie game, XENOTILT, which is a really badass pinball game y'all should check out. And now he's back with the sequel, XENOTILT. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks for having me.
So, the first question I want to ask you, especially in today's environment of indie games, is what inspired you to actually make a sequel to your game? It's almost like a novel concept these days when an indie developer makes a second game rather than doing 15 DLCs or just updating your game perpetually forever. What inspired you to say, okay, no, it's actually time to make a sequel, official, different game than the first?
Well, the first game, I think it just did well enough and it was received well enough. And I had all of these ideas that got cut. And I don't know, we kind of started just talking about it. When I say we, it's me and Ralph, my co-developer / publisher. We would just talk about this sequel. We already had the name XENOTILT, and we would just kind of be like, it's for XENOTILT, it's XENOTILT. So we did a year of early access for Demon's Tilt, and then I think in the December that it launched, we had rolled the project for the second game, and I had already gotten started in a November or December. But what made me decide to do the sequel? Yeah, I think I still had some stuff I wanted to try out, and it just seemed like a home run. And I didn't think it would, here I am. It's going to be 3 and change years later. Mm-hmm. I definitely didn't think it would take this long, but this is just the way it goes.
So why did you decide on a full-on sequel rather than Demon's Tilt DX XXX 666 edition? Or you know how a lot of these indie games, they make the launch version and then they make the updated version, and then they make an update to the update, and then they put DLC on the update to the update. It's not clear to the audience, I'm a big fan of actual sequels to games, so I'm really curious, what made you take that step rather than doing the sort of intermediary step of just doing DXs and special editions and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's all coming back to me now. It's been a haze. So why roll a sequel instead of just building on? So there's actually because the Demon's Tilt was my first game, there was a lot of tech baggage, things that were done in interesting ways that could be done better. So
right,
we basically duplicated the project, gutted it. I go in and just put it all on the chopping block and cut a bunch of stuff that wasn't working. I basically re-rolled everything in a better, cleaner way. So people that are coming from the first game into this will maybe not be apparent at first, but everything should feel smoother, and everything's just slightly better version of what was in the first one. There's new lighting, and I went a little harder in the rendering side and tried some new stuff. So, with the performance that's freed up, you kind of, that gets filled back up again
with the effects, with the good stuff.
Yeah, so there's more enemies on screen. There's a swarming mechanic where bugs kind of hatch, and the swarm is as big as I can make it. There are some platforms that have less to give.
Yeah, there's a very natural platform that would probably be attractive for pinball players that does not have a lot of horsepower. We all can recognize that.
For the first one, we went as hard as we could, and it's 60 on Switch. So, and as of right now,
that's impressive.
It's 60 on Steam Deck currently. So,
well, I've heard all my friends have Steam Decks now. I'm like the kid in school where everyone's got a Sega Genesis and I've got an NES. Everyone's got their Steam Decks and they're messaging me about how powerful and bitchin' the hardware is and how it can emulate PS2 games and all this. So I imagine on your side of things, looking at the Steam Deck, does that thing seem like a real powerhouse in terms of performance? You're like, oh yeah, turn on max effects, let's blow this thing up kind of thing? Because I could see that being really attractive for your game, XENOTILT, because playing it on the go on a Steam Deck, that seems like a very natural fit.
So for this one, we wanted it to feel native to Steam Deck, so we got it running on Steam Deck as soon as we could, kind of. We did have to do a lot of performance stuff, but certain rendering effects, I don't know if you know what screen space distortion is, when you have a rendering effect that does like a wobbling effect on the screen itself.
Well, I do know that when I look at associated channels with my channel, as in what channels my audience watches, a lot of them watch Digital Foundry. So I assume a lot of them out there, they're all about the ray tracing and the yeah. So they probably know what you're talking about.
So yeah, that's just one of those weird things that eats up frames, and especially when you have like a dedicated video hardware that can kind of tank it. So we limit that, turn it off in a lot of cases, but really it's pretty, the parity's there. It's pretty good on Steam Deck. Yeah.
Nice. Sadly, I don't think you can rotate the Steam Deck in your hand, Tate, which would be pretty sick. I guess maybe someone's going to come up with some way to do that, I assume.
So when we did the first game, we had like a Wonder Swan control scheme. We tried our best.
Nice.
It's for the Switch Lite, which has...
Yes. Yeah. I have one now.
Yeah. So Ralph did like a Wonder Swan. I don't know if it's very good, but I know at least 2 or 3 people have said that they use it. So I'm gonna take a look at the Steam Deck again. I'm gonna take a look at that and see maybe there's a kind of Wonder Swan Tate mode that we can have specific.
Yeah, and since it's like a Linux PC, right? So someone could just build their own sort of, I'm not saying a person, I'm saying probably someone with initiative out there, people could make some kind of like a flip grip. Yes, someone could probably make a Steam Deck flip grip. I'm assuming it's Linux, so you're not going to get locked out of doing that. So coming from Demon's Tilt into XENOTILT, what was on your itinerary for what you wanted to improve upon, or what concepts you wanted to follow up after Demon's Tilt? What was the big idea behind that?
So for the first game, we marketed it as like bullet hell meets pinball, and a lot of that is true. I mean, it borrows like scoring stuff, and it definitely has pink bullets and stuff, but it doesn't have shooting. So in the first game, I wanted there to be a kind of a shooting mechanic. In Demon's Tilt, I wanted there to be a magic missile, and I experimented nonstop with this, and I couldn't find anything, and so there's no shooting in that. But the first thing on XENOTILT was shooting, and so we came up with the turret metaphor, right? So this idea that there's these turrets flanking the side of your flippers, and when you hold the ball and nudge down, you can activate these turrets, which will auto lock onto enemies and fire on them if you have ammunition, and it works really well.
Nice.
And when I saw it play tested live, and we just tell people with one line how to do this. What made it work was when I was experimenting, I had an action button that you would press, and I think as a designer, you have to be careful about adding a button is like a big deal. Like if you can piggyback onto buttons and have buttons do multiple things, that's good. But trying to teach someone a new button is like, it's a big ask. So
yeah, but be careful. Sorry, this is an inside joke about mathematosis and context sensitivity, where the new trend now is, don't make it too context sensitive, buddy. If you have to, make a new button.
So this isn't context. This is more like, in this game, cradling a ball is good play. And so by nudging down, I'm promoting good play.
Yeah,
and ball
that's a good
control.
Idea.
And it has the added effect of now the turrets are clearing the way for setting up your next shot. So it's more like inserting that mechanic, nesting it somewhere nice, rather than this button.
Rather than adding in a whole new layer that's...
Yeah, like, what's this button do? You can always press it. Can I always press this button? Like,
right, yeah.
This solves that problem. Like, it's... I'm patting myself on the back right now.
Good job. Good work. Nicely done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like really good design to me, though, because if you can add mechanics into the design that naturally are congruent with how the game is played in a meta sense, like... What you want to do is you want to create mechanics that encourage the meta that you want people to do. So if you want people to cradle the ball, adding in a mechanic that makes cradling the ball more rewarding is a good idea.
Yeah, as a baseline, like for me, I want to find things that are fun, and then all of the mechanics are promoting that fun thing. That should be exciting. You have to take some lumps as a designer and figure out that rewarding the fun is better than trying to force a kind of a play style on somebody that they're not enjoying, and you're trying to enforce it through rewards and stuff, and it's just like they don't want to play this one. they want to be.
Yes, exactly. That reminds me of a topic in game design that I'm going to talk about soon, which I call prescriptive game design, where developers, they have a tool and they really want you to use this tool. An example was in that twin stick shooter I reviewed, Nex Machina, I think it's called. They have this dodge roll button or whatever it is, but your base movement in a lot of these cases is just smarter to do than doing these high commitment dodges. And so for me, like, I don't want to use this button. I feel like it's too committed. It's too niche. I don't really like it. The designers are like, no, Mark, but I'm going to make you use the button because I'm going to put in these random lasers that you have to use it on. Like, there's no choice. And I call that prescriptive game design. And that's really trendy right now with Western design. Like with combat mechanics, we want you to use a parry, so we're going to force you to parry. In these scenarios, you can't dodge, you can't go around, you can't duck, you must parry. This is how it's going to work. And I'm really not a fan of this style of game design. So I'm really happy to hear that your idea wasn't, all right, well, we want people to shoot the turrets, so we're going to have to cut against some of this pinball stuff and make them do special things to get the turrets to work. I like how you integrated it into the pinballing. I think that's always the way to go.
Yeah, I think for me, I try and have the mechanics have to encourage creativity with the player and kind of let them do it their way. I don't like that prescribed rote thing too much. Yeah, like
especially in a pinball game, that could be a nightmare.
Very telegraphed parries, this kind of thing. Like you have to dodge roll as the circle shrinks.
Yep.
Not into that one.
Yeah, I know. I feel like what happened was, this is my theory, but it almost feels to me like this is the type of thing you would learn in game design school. And so it's like this big trend in game design school. It's like, we figured out how to make any mechanic work ever. All you have to do is force the player to do it. Isn't that smart? And everyone's like, oh, that's great game design. And so, yeah, you get it so much in modern games now. Everything's all about, okay, we have this mechanic. We give you the hammer. Here's the nail. Hit the nail. Aren't you smart? Don't you feel rewarded? Another part of that is in action games now, I swear this started with the DMC reboot, but the whole color matching, you know how big that is now? It's like, oh, you have a red attack, so you use it on red enemies. And oh, the enemy does a yellow attack, so you use your yellow shield. Oh, see how clever you are. To me, it feels very childish, but
I like creativity. Like I'm playing. I'm not gonna bash Diablo 4, but I like ARPGs, and there's another game called Last Epoch, and I've played a game called Grim Dawn, which are action RPGs made by people who really enjoy those games. And
So I wanted to bring this up. We're talking about action RPGs. We're talking about turrets and pinball games. What separates XENOTILT from other pinball games, in your opinion? What's the pitch for people who might be interested in pinball generally, or maybe are not even interested in pinball at all? What's the sales pitch for XENOTILT?
So what I'm doing with XENOTILT and did with the previous one is lean into the video game side of things while still keeping a firm foot in core traditional real life pinball. The things that I identify about that game that I thought were kind of missing, and then not being slavish to them and not being so strict with things, and
like physics and stuff like that. Like, oh, a real pinball would fall at this speed, so I have to do that type of thing. Right.
So there are pinball simulation games as video games. They have those. There are certain things about the real game that aren't captured in there that I try and bring in. So like the nudging in XENOTILT and DemonSilt, they're four directional, so you can nudge down. Okay, you can't move a ball down in pinball. You can move it up and left and right.
Yeah.
So I also give you direct control over the ball. And another kind of under the hood thing is in real pinball, the game and the operator, they have to keep you from picking up the machine and moving it 4 feet, right? So that's where the tilt mechanic comes from. It's a little tilt bob, and when you move the machine, this little tilt bob touches a sensor, a ring, and it'll shut the machine down, right? And so
I've done it myself.
Right. So you know that nudging the game has become part of the game because they can't stop you from moving it. So now nudging the physical table is part of the game thoroughly. And so I wanted to I think a general audience might not even know that. They think it's cheating. But basically, in the real game, once you start nudging, it turns into more and more a game of skill.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of almost like the auto fire discussion in Shmups, where if you're brand new to Shmups, a lot of people just assume, oh, auto fire is cheating.
Turbo, yeah. It's
yeah, but it turns out world record Japanese players have been building auto fire switches for decades, and all the world records, almost all, depending on the game, but almost all of them use auto fire because the auto fire opens up the design of the game. Because otherwise, a lot of the design of the game is, oh man, how fast can you press a button? Are you a top tier button presser or are you a low tier button presser? How quickly can we get carpal tunnel in our hands?
Yeah, it's. I think it's nice when people, when the game evolves, when you see these games kind of evolve and they just become a evolutionary beast.
Treasure, one of the first to do that, by the way. Little Shmup trivia for you. Treasure are among some of the first developers to build auto fire into their game naturally. Like way back on like the 16-bit era where no one was doing that. Treasure was doing it. Crazy.
To continue on that with the tilting mechanic, because it's a video game and I know that you've just tilted, I can just nerf the power of the tilt. So the player almost has an infinite number of nudges. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like a player can't pick up the game and throw it 4 feet. They can nudge the stick. Okay, they nudge the stick hard. Okay, they get a hard nudge, and then after that, there's a cooldown, and they get less of a nudge. So I can just nerf the movement of the ball, and that itself opens up interesting stuff in there. Well,
are you telling me that like a lot of other pinball games don't have nudging meta? Is that something like that's kind of exclusive to your pinball games?
They just do a simulation version of the real thing.
So no nudging meta.
No, you can nudge in all pin sims and stuff, but what I'm saying is that the penalty is just is exactly what it is in the real game, where you nudge 3 times, you get a warning. You get 3 warnings, you get a tilt.
Oh, okay. So the nudging meta is different in your game. You both have them, but yours is more dynamic, it sounds like.
Yeah, I made it so that way, the penalty really doesn't show up that often. It's much more, you're allowed to do it more. It's just that I can control how much power is on the ball. So, there's just a cooldown on it. And basically when that cooldown's at 0, you get a full power nudge and you'll see a kind of a rainbow trail. But what it does is it opens up all these like new impossible shots that the player can make. And so I run with that.
That's really cool. I like this too, because it feels like the simulation pinball games, and this is why I don't like simulation games generally, so nothing against pinball specifically, but I've always felt like simulation games, you're not really taking advantage of the medium itself. And then on top of that, rarely, if ever, do simulation games actually do a good job. Maybe there's like some racing sim that's crazy, but rarely do actual simulation games give you the skills you need to actually implement in IRL. Like maybe they can inform some thoughts and strategies, but it's not like parody. It's not like you can get the world record on the pinball sim and then be like, bam, I got the actual world record. You still have to do it on the board. Whereas with you, if you get the world record in XENOTILT or Demon's Tilt, you actually got the world record because it is a distinctive game, which I like. I like that idea. So having your own game exclusive nudging meta, I think that's a good direction.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of world record, smooth transition to the next topic. So
wait,
go ahead.
Hold on. Yeah, I should probably sell it more because we got in the weeds about mechanics and stuff, which is fine.
Okay, sell hard.
It's got graphics. It's got monsters and things and giant screen-filling bosses and lighting. And, it does things that normal pinball just can't do for cost reasons and the nature of physics and stuff. So,
It's got bosses too, right?
Right. Yes. You do your screen-filling bosses, which is kind of, who doesn't love a screen-filling boss? And as an artist,
you're not a fan of this channel if you don't like screen-filling bosses. I'll tell you that right now.
Your bosses don't fill the screen, guys. Come on.
Come on. What is this, Toho? It needs to fill the screen. Come on.
Where I'm at right now in development, my bosses aren't broken out into, they call them like instances or like discrete, where you can bring him back as another. It just takes a little bit of legwork to make that. Where you can just and then spawn him in with if he's red now, he has this.
You got to do the cave classic, which is you bring in the bosses from the last game. So in XENOTILT, in the final stage or final section of the game, you bring in the Demon's Tilt bosses and you have to fight them, and then you fight the TLB of XENOTILT. That would be pretty cool.
You're thinking like a real game developer, where you're trying to be as economical as possible with
yes,
right.
Yes, bring them in. Yep.
So
old school sprites and everything.
Yeah. So one of the things I didn't account for when I started this project was that I would have to retheme every single element as sci-fi.
Oh, jeez. You should have made this Demon's Tilt Eternal and not have to do that.
Yeah, so that's why people do that. Yeah. But as soon as I was like I got to restyle. This has to be teched out now. You know, the literal same thing. You know, drop target.
So we went from hell demons. Now we're space demons.
Yeah, gothic horror. Nice. So all the crosses are gone and replaced with greebles.
Is that a sci-fi reference? Is a greeble a sci-fi thing?
Oh yeah, greeble is a like on a Star Wars vehicle, all of the little details.
Oh, okay, nice.
That are kind of on the underside. That's a greeble, and it's just from the model making days. They would make these things from other model kits, and they just called them greeble.
Just spare crap they put on the model. Like, there we go, greeble.
It's like real life. It's design. There's a concentration of details on industrial machinery. So.
That's really cool. Good. So was that? I'm assuming that's a lot of sprite work then.
Yeah. So I had basically. This was a long time ago, but from 2000 to 2010, doing pixel work is a bit of a humble brag, but it's a little bit is easier than doing like a high res.
I would imagine, yeah.
So it's like mathematically constrained, so there's less mistakes to make. There's still a lot of like good art decisions to make, but it seems like a lot less. So really, for me personally, it's like fun. It's like I don't even draw with a tablet. I just use my mouse and I click around, and it's actually one of the most enjoyable parts of this.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you're a real life artist. So for you, like, this is all natural and mathematical. You stick like a pixel art grid in front of me when I'm trying to work on my stuff. I'm like, oh God, I can't imagine things in cubes. Who do you think I am? I'm not a robot. So yeah, it's funny how whenever I interview people and ask them about sprite art, some developers like you, it just comes to them so naturally, and it's so like, it's mathematical, it all makes sense. Then other people, I can't think mathematically, so this is actually really hard.
Also, being a kid, getting my first computer and RPG Maker and editing Marvel vs. Capcom sprites and stuff, maybe it's paying itself back.
Yes. The secret internship of sprite
RPG
art
Maker
modding.
95.
Yes. Yeah. Well, awesome. So XENOTILT sounds like you're trying to take Demon's Tilt and make it bigger and more robust. Like, it wasn't any besides the turrets. It sounds like that the turrets was like kind of the new mechanic, and then the rest of it you're trying to just generally beef up. Is that kind of a good summary of the difference between Demon's Tilt and XENOTILT?
There's a lot more. So if you're familiar with the first game, there's just systems layered into systems and layered into systems. It's almost like once you have like the kind of framework or paradigm that the game sits in, going deeper and weirder becomes easier and
right freeing. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I think like when you start a game, you're like, what am I making? Well, once you figure out, I'm making survival horror, then you can put the paradigm that sits in. Yeah. And then you can go deep and weird. Yeah. So I got super weird and deep with this. So like the bullets in this, you can in the first game you can convert bullets from pink to green, and green becomes harmless and pass through. And then you can bank it for your jackpots. So in this, you can upgrade them 4 times. You can juggle them, and they'll float around the screen being juggled. And you can do things to the bullets. I'm calling it like the Varia bullet system. So before they get banked, you have this window that you can basically milk them for points, or you can convert them into ammo for your turrets. You can convert them to these metals that go to your multiplier. So the metal in this system, you earn metals that will be collected as a resource that grants you an ability to shoot a shot for multipliers. Your general multipliers is like a bread and butter way to start increasing your score. that's one example of going deep. But
right, so you literally did
yeah.
build on top of the existing mechanics of like, okay, let's push these
so,
further.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
every mechanic, and it's not just turrets. I mean, if you've seen the trailer, there's a Raiden laser, which just had to happen because we want it to happen.
Yes, the purple. Are you talking about the purple toothpaste laser?
Yeah. So that,
Nice.
I mean, we had talked about it. We like shelved it, and then I watched Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I came back the next day, and I'm like,
Is there a Raiden laser in that sucker?
Well, like the Ghostbusters laser has great sound design, and it kind of is that, right?
Nice.
So I'm like, we gotta revisit this. So Ralph started digging into it, and I think our solution is not a Raiden solution with the kind of that perfect circle
bending thing that it does.
Yeah. We do it a little different, and then once we built it, then I'm like, well, it has to do something. So we created I created a collateral. It does collateral damage to other enemies. So the laser fires out when you have an arc charge. It'll fire out, and it'll do collateral damage to any enemy that it fries that hits the beam. And then I'm like, I gotta go further because I did play testing. We took it to PAX, and everyone always had ammo up because they're not using it often enough. The way that the laser's activated is you hold down when you have the ball cradled in the flipper. You hold down and the laser fires. So the new way that it works is if you keep holding it, you can just drain all of your charges, and every charge that it consumes, it's gonna double the multiplier on it.
Nice.
So I'm basically saying it's like a jackpot laser.
That's cool. So speaking of the combo meter changes, I wanted to talk to you about what was your overall philosophy with designing the scoring system, because especially a pinball game, I'm assuming it lives and dies by its scoring because you can't really beat it survival wise. So it does come down heavily to the scoring system. So what was your philosophy behind what makes an engaging scoring system in pinball?
Things that you do, points are evidence of stuff that you did, basically, right? So you did something, and now I need to come up with an appropriate reward for the thing you did. So that's where it starts. And my kind of personal, because I'm a visual guy, I just used zeros. Like, I just throw zeros on it. So everything has to be like, if it's bigger, it's a magnitude bigger, just so that way you're not splitting hairs with, this is 100 points, this is 200 points, it's 100 points, it's 1,000 points, it's 10,000 points, right? And that leads to big numbers, which I like too. So that's the first one is creating like a distinction, and then you can do the gag where something does one point of damage, which is always
right, just to troll the player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to let them know it's ineffective. So it's like the scoring, because I always wanted scoring pips in the game, like visual scoring pips, because I think they look cool.
Oh so, yeah, big fan of those. So it sounds like you really are attracted to the idea of like exponential style scoring, is what it sounds like. Would that be an accurate description of the scoring system? XENOTILT, it's very exponential. Yeah,
the other thing was a lot of like traditional pinball games, like the games are not marathons. This game, like, it's a couch game. You can play it leaned back, and you can zone out and flow and whatever, but I think the regular game of pinball is like physical pinball is high intensity, all or nothing. You're on. There's no relaxing. Every time the ball approaches the flipper, the risk is 100% almost.
Yep, so I've played them. Batman Returns.
So with this, it's like, okay, this is like so in the traditional game they go, if you're just, they call it chopping wood, where if you have a game that's just slowly feeding you numbers, they say, that's chopping wood. It's not good. They like an all or nothing scoring system.
Probably for coin revenue too. I mean, let's be real. You don't want, in an arcade, you don't want a dude playing on it for 30 minutes. You want a dude playing on it for 2 minutes.
No, that's something else. But I think what I'm talking about is that their approach to scoring, that chopping wood, that's what they call it. Pejorative is when you're getting incremental amounts of points over time, and it's like it just feels like grinding. But for me, I'm just like, okay, you can have these huge bonuses, but then I'm using the combo meter and child scoring and the general flow of points that are coming in. I'm basically counting that as like a revenue stream, and then these big fat bonuses are coming in. So there is like a constant stream of numbers coming in that probably reflect how long you've played.
It sounds like what you're doing is you're rewarding survival to some degree, rather than...
so it's like a mix of marathon. Yeah. It's like a mix of marathon, but it's like if you're planning your marathon, you're just gonna the better player who knows more is definitely gonna do better than someone who's just playing for a long time. If you're focused in on the kind of, they're called protocols in this game, but these protocol quests and stuff, then you're just gonna do better. So everyone should have a certain level of fun, and then like be able to reward the deeper player by going deeper.
Yeah, definitely. So, I like that. You want a well-rounded game.
You know, rather like some games have a basement and they put you in the basement. Mm-hmm. I don't want a basement. I want to raise the ceiling. So you're having fun. You're not in the basement, and then the ceiling goes higher and higher and higher, and then the better player is getting a very high ceiling. But I never want to throw someone in the basement to make my mechanics look good by scaling them or something like that.
So you're standing there at PAX for 4 days. Were you selling copies of the game? Like, could you... I'm talking Demon's Tilt, obviously, not XENOTILT. Could you sell Demon's Tilt while you're there?
Yeah. So, yeah, you can sell copies. Yeah, you can sell keys. So when we did PAX and we got into... It was called the Indie Mini Booth. And we got 2 days, and we sold keys, and we sold shirts. I think we legitimately, like, made money. Like, I don't think anyone makes money at PAX except me, bro.
Probably because the shirts, I'm assuming, because the art for Demon's Tilt is really cool. Probably because the shirts looked really cool. So I could see people walking up and just buying a shirt, even if they're like, I don't even know what game this is, but it's got some demon shit on it. Let's do this.
No one knew what the game was, so it's a little presumptuous to sell shirts. But listen, I want to make merch. Like, we actually could afford marketing art this time. So we have marketing art for XENOTILT. And we went back and we did marketing art for Demon's Tilt. We went back and retroactively did it because the original marketing art for Demon's Tilt was just screenshots. It was just the most honest way to depict the game. Like, because you see a lot of indie games with like strong marketing art. It's an illustration.
Oh, I know.
But what does that mean? Like they all look the same. And honestly, I think, you know, the Steam audience is so savvy. It's like, show me the screenshot. Let's see it.
As a YouTuber, someone who specializes in the art of thumbnail, I think it's actually kind of a blend. I do this with my own videos too, where like you want the thumbnail to be attractive, or so your marketing art, you want it to be attractive, and I think it can be a bit beyond what the game offers, but it's got to be congruent enough so that when they look at the art and then look at the game, they go, that matches. Think of like Doom, right? Like the marketing art of Doom is beyond what Doom is, but then you look at Doom and you're like, oh, Doom looks cool too, so it works together.
Yeah, so the marketing art for XENOTILT and then the retroactive one we did is basically a symmetrical representation of the playfield, but it's painted with the boss characters in a montage. There's flippers, you got to see the flippers there. Our Steam impressions and stuff, and the metrics that we see behind the scenes, I guess you can infer how effective this stuff is, because our numbers are pretty good, and they actually give you a comparative number against other games.
Nice. Your click-through rate. They're doing YouTube strats, basically.
Steam is an extremely honest platform, meaning like these platforms that are beholden to advertisers and selling, like, you know, Twitter has to sell you boosting, and Instagram has to sell you boosting.
Yes.
So they basically, you know, Facebook is trying to sell you advertising, and so the advertising that they're giving is kind of in my
low tier
understanding is purposefully choked out. You know, they're not going to give you the full hose.
It's eBay. eBay does that too now.
But so Steam being this honest platform, and when I figured out like Steam is extremely honest, is I saw someone they posted like a screenshot of the game, and they got 98 likes. 98 likes. How many friends do they have? 110 friends? How is this possible? Like, how is this possible? That would never happen on any other platform. Where, my God, people who follow you see the content.
Let's put this in a realistic number setting here. So I have about 18,000 followers. If I put a community post and it gets 300 likes on it, that's like viral. I'm like, that's a great community post, and 18,000 people are seeing that post. So It's like basically impossible for someone with 100 followers to get 98 likes unless they're robots or something.
So what I'm saying is that, like, Steam is just honest about, someone hops in game, it shows the notification unless the person disables it. Blah 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 has hopped on this game. If we post a community post, people that follow or own the game, there's windows that they can see that community post that were made.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool.
One unique problem we had is people knew the first game but didn't know that we had a sequel, and also we have this non-numbered sequel naming scheme. So we created a unique problem where now we have to re-educate it and reactivate a previous audience.
So we're talking about game genres. You kind of went the shmup style of it, right? Like a traditional indie game would call it Demon's Tilt 2. But you did the shmup thing where you made kind of a sequel game but named it something different, so then people are like, what, is this the same series? They're like, kind of, I guess. So it's funny. So like shmup players probably would draw the connection because of the similar naming schemes and stuff. But I think the average gamer probably wouldn't.
But I did see one funny comment where someone was like, Demon's Tilt is making a sequel and it's called XENOTILT. They must know what they're doing. Because it's just such an unorthodox and weirdo thing to do. But, it's just, this marketing side of stuff. It's like, well, I call it the unfortunate, the unfortunate side of this is you got to make the thing and then you actually have to sell it too.
Oh, yeah. Well, the weird thing about like marketing and press and getting your stuff out there is everyone thinks they've got the answers. Everyone thinks they know oh, no, in this scenario, you do this and that. And I used to think that way for a bit there until I realized I go on YouTube and I'll see like a video with what I would consider the worst. Like, look at Summoning Salt. Here's a great example. Summoning Salt has the most generic titles ever with the most basic generic thumbnails ever. And yet, through some magic, his channel is like explosively popular. And so what I'm saying is you can't quantify these things, because if I made a video called World Record Progression of Dodonpachi and then just put a screenshot of the Dodonpachi ship, that'd be like 200 views, So there is no magic crystal ball. So for all you know, there is something magical about calling it XENOTILT, and it'll catch fire and you'll never expect it.
At a certain point, all of your problems, you can't Google them. You can't ask somebody. Your problems. It's like, where are my keys? Like, that's I know we have like air tags now, but that's my problem. That's a problem that you have an answer to. So like doing the sequel thing, like, okay, Google, how do I make a sequel to a game that had success in this weird way? No one can tell you that. And so this whole process was a very
add microtransactions. That's always my advice whenever indie developers ask me. It's just add gambling mechanics and microtransactions. That seems to work. So go ahead and do that.
Yeah, we didn't do that. But I should talk about progression and meta progression, that kind of problem that I have that's specific to me that I'm trying to solve. I mean, I do want to just touch on this meta progression thing that's different in XENOTILT. You've heard of this concept of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Oh my gosh. Be careful. Bog and I talk about this endlessly. Yes.
Okay, but I'll give you my thoughts on it. So for the audience, like, intrinsic motivation is like, if you like these skill-based games, then the skill, the joy of executing is the reward in itself.
Yeah. And I have a very counterintuitive feeling on this.
I'm gonna assume your position on it, but you gotta understand that most people, we talk about exercise, like, most people doing the exercise is not enough for them. Even, how great they're going to feel is not enough for them in this game. So there is some compromised versions of this, and then there's some that play into, it's like half and half. So there's skills. There's a per game skill progression, a perk system, which is something that the first game didn't have. So someone who's extrinsically motivated, they want to see every perk. There's 9 perks on offer. So every time you lock a ball, you get a different perk. So an example is one of the perks is chain reaction. So when you pass through a pink bullet, when you break a pink bullet, it'll explode and create a chain reaction and destroy that entire pattern. Really, it's going to try and destroy that entire pattern, but any adjacent bullet's going to explode. So someone who's extrinsically motivated now has something to, I want to see all 9 perks, but then the player who's the intrinsic player, wants to exploit these perks and come up with, an unlock order that suits their playstyle, right? Go ahead. You go say what you want to say.
Well, I feel like what this concept is, like trying to put a philosophy of game design into a rubric that I think doesn't make sense, because in my opinion, if you are playing a game for recreation, you are already from step 1 intrinsically motivated. And so extrinsic motivation, in my opinion, would be if you're playing the game for money, if you're playing the game for a career purpose, if you're playing the game for benefit outside of the game. So for example, extrinsic motivation would be you're a streamer and the game is super popular and you want to be more popular and you want people to donate to you. That would be, in my opinion, an extrinsic motivation to play a game. So I always feel like for devs, don't get too lost in this rabbit hole, because it can be before you know it, that's like the road to gambling and microtransactions.
No. I mean, in our case, like especially with the sequel, I've given all I can to go deep and give the hardcore player, all the tools and stuff that they want. But I want to make an impression on a mainstream player that keeps them playing, so that way they can uncover the depth there. And if that means that they need, so we have like a codex in this. So I don't know if you know this, but every platform has a different achievement system. Some platforms don't.
I do know
that.
Yeah.
So in this game, we're like, okay, we made that mistake in the first game. We're relying on platforms for achievements. So we just moved all of the achievements to a local codex called the Challenge Codex. So everyone can do challenges. And then, we just link the platform achievement to there. And then I created like a bingo card with some prizes and stuff. And
see, the way I'd phrase this is more like you're giving the player purpose. Are you giving the player purpose? And I think that for me is an easier idea, because
I think this is something to consider in this, like I don't know, what do you want to call it, like skill action?
Well, here's a really good example that's contemporary to today's gaming environment, which is, so with arcade modes in fighting games, like Street Fighter 6 has an arcade mode. I don't believe Street Fighter 5 had one on launch. And I remember at the time, people were saying about Street Fighter 5, people shilling it basically. They're like, well, if you actually just go into versus mode, you can replicate your own arcade mode anyway. Because if you think about it, all arcade mode is just versus mode with a random button on it. But to me, I've always said no, because there is a meaning and purpose in the game telling you what to play, when to play, how to play. Even though you could, on your own, recreate that experience, the game recognizing that goal and valuing it is motivating and rewarding for the player. Yeah. So, like, putting the achievements in the game, in my idea, is a good idea, because it's giving the player a purpose from the game's point of view. The game is acknowledging the player's actions.
And some people are just not. You go for a high score, I don't know. Like,
most people, not some. Most.
They could be having fun, but they don't get scoring.
Yeah, that's a huge problem with scoring systems now. Overall, that's kind of okay. So in this game you have there's bosses to down and there's stuff to see. You can loop the board. So that's one way that that player can be motivated to stick with it and have fun. I mean, it's all in service of just give it a chance, and there's fun in here for you to find. Another really good example of this that you could add into XENOTILT, and I think every shmup dev should consider, is an example I saw in Devil Daggers, where after every single run, the game just quickly and automatically shows you what that run did on the scoreboard. Even if it was like a failed run, a bad run, it'll just quickly show you whether you PB'd or not. And then when you PB, it goes like boom, 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 and it like scrolls you up, and it's just done all in-game in your face.
The Hyper Demon board is insane.
Yeah, so that leaderboard I think is very innovative, because it's doing something that is what I'm talking about, the game acknowledging you, because it's bringing the leaderboard into the game rather than putting it in a little menu that you never look at because it's like dirty and ugly to go in there unless you get a world record or something.
people who don't know, in Hyper Demon, when you set a record, your score, you watch your score travel up at like light speed on the board, and there's like a rising synth.
Yes, it's amazing.
Noise, and you're just like, oh my god, this is the best feeling ever. But they took that leaderboard and they presented it in like this brilliant way where you're seeing your score rise past all these people and blowing past their name. Awesome.
And it's forcing you to do it rather than. See, this is the problem Shmups do, is Shmups always put the leaderboard in a little section that you never want to go visit because
we always show them their, the leaderboards after. But again, some people are just they're not into that. And I could talk about what I'm doing different in EX mode, because there will be an EX mode. If people don't know, in the first game there was an EX mode, which was a alternate revised rules based on the early access play, where I revised the rules and I trimmed some stuff and changed things. And then there's bonus tables that you go to, and the flippers are purple, of course.
Hell yeah.
So, but in this EX mode, there's something called EX Survivors, where you can rescue. There's a sequence of things you do. So when you clear a bonus stage in EX, you have a chance to rescue someone who you can now assemble in a crew, and they have a buff attached to them, and all of this will be balanced in a way that when you have your team assembled, that you're figuring out a way to engage more with the mechanics that you like, or circumvent mechanics that you don't like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, just very simply, like, you can rescue a survivor that gives you more ball save time, or has a free multi-ball extend, stuff like this. But I think that idea of embodying characters and stuff, we're really getting into it, aren't we? Is important to.
Yes.
I don't know. It just, we can borrow these things, and as long as it's fun. Like, again, I'm not trying to sell. None of this is to sell microtransactions. I don't get it. I don't have any little DLC. In Steam, you can see your DLC revenue, and mine is 0. So, I'm not selling anything.
Well, basically the idea I'm getting at here is I feel like if you frame your game design from this framework of external versus internal, intrinsic motivation and everything, you're kind of viewing the question a little bit weird, unless you are planning to build in microtransactions. Because if you take the logic to its furthest idea, right? If you take extrinsic motivation to its natural conclusion, what you want to motivate the player sort of against their will. And how do you do that? Usually through more psychologically manipulative tactics. And so that's the part I'm like, well, maybe developers should focus more on, like, okay, what am I reinforcing what the player's doing? Am I giving them purpose? Am I acknowledging their interest? Am I acknowledging their investment in my game? Versus, how do I make the player do what I want them to do? Even if they don't want to do it, they'll do it because I want them to. So that's why I don't really like that framework of game design. You're talking about
games that are these games of service, which are basically...
Or mobile games, like mobile games overall.
Yeah, they're built on this. I'm simply wrapping like a meta progression around what I have, and in service of attracting a different player and saying, go rescue the guys. Like, if you need something to do, and there is a reason to do it. There is everything has a mechanical reason. So it's not.
Well, I feel like as long as you acknowledge the player is doing something, it becomes naturally reinforcing in itself. Like if the player starts doing something and the game says, hey, I notice you're doing this and I like you to do this, it just automatically makes the player more motivated to do it because you're getting feedback from the game itself. So it's like
one issue I had was, everything is per game. So some players they want to see a kind of progression that happens outside of that. That's what I mean by meta.
I know what you're saying here.
They just want to, they this is another very gamified research thing, but they're saying like a completionist is like huge. Like, some people just like to do everything, and I was like, okay, fine, I could give them stuff to do. That's totally fine. But I'm just being like honest.
Like, you could have like for example, you could have like a total score achievement, like achieve 10 trillion. I don't know how big your scoring scaling is, but like achieve 10 trillion points just overall. somehow, and that could be that could be an achievement that links game sessions together.
Yeah, so there's stuff like that, and we have the billionaires board and the club is back, stuff like that. But
yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
It's just about. I mean, just for me personally, I like to be a bit broader. Like I love the game culture and the niche weird arcade stuff. I say sometimes that I was trying to make my own hidden gem.
Right. You did. You've unlocked that achievement. You can go ahead and put a gold star on your wall. Achievement unlocked. Create hidden gem.
I want to make it unhidden. No, I want to.
In my opinion, to be a hidden gem, you have to have a loyal player base. So treasure games are hidden gems, in my opinion.
YouTubers say that it's a hidden gem.
I know YouTubers have gone too far with that term. That's for sure. It's like. Ocarina of Time, hidden gem. Like any game that's not at all right in the algorithm, it's a hidden gem now. But I think Demon's Tilt is genuinely a hidden gem though, in that it is a really awesome game that people are very passionate about, and it has its own audience base that if they come across you, they'll tell you about it, which I think you've nailed it. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think what's cool about that. About the first one and kind of why the second one got made is we had an unremarkable launch, and then your first day is the most copies your best day. It's like, oh, this sucks.
when you're a somebody, when you're a nobody, you have to build those up.
Yeah, those are people who are
established.
We just continue to slowly sell copies over time, and it's just consistently selling, which probably means we just never reached our audience fully. Right. To say that we're not tapped out if it's still selling, I'm totally fine.
Yeah, that game's not going to tap out anytime soon because it is so, I like to call it sticky. It's a sticky game in that when people play it, it sticks in their hands, it sticks in their head, it sticks in their memories. It's just a really, really sticky game. So it's just a matter of, can it come across your eyes or will it not? That's kind of how I feel how it is.
We're just going for something different. Every game wants to marry you, wants to be the biggest thing in your life.
Yes, all or nothing, baby.
This is the little side action. The
mistress.
I don't need all of your time, but I do notice this becomes someone's distraction for randomly a new person will fall in love with it, and I'll see the tweets and stuff.
Yeah, I can see a common scenario you hear is that, well, I bought Demon's Tilt on Switch, and, I played it for a little bit, and then one day I was stuck on a bus, and I played it for 6 hours, and now I love it. Do you get that kind of feedback all the time? It's like, I got it, it was kind of there, and then one day I ended up in a situation where I started playing it, and I just kept going. Yeah.
Road trips and airplanes and... Yeah, this kind of, a marathon.
Well, that's my channel, too. People never tell me, oh, yeah, I found your channel off of the YouTube front page, and here we are. It's always one time I was riding on a bus, and I needed to listen to random shit for 4 hours, and there you were. So, yeah.
They tell you, hey, anyone, you should just tell people, if you admire, I started doing this more, so just send a note if they're done. The DMs are open. I don't want anything. I just want to tell you I like the thing. And they're usually very happy with that.
Alrighty, so XENOTILT, it sounds like it's very far along. Where should people be looking? What should they be looking for? What's kind of the timeline in your mind that people should be watching for when it comes to this game? EA, so that'll be on Steam. Everyone, just the audience.
Yeah.
Go to the Steam page, my friends.
Yes, if you want to do a favor, if you don't have it wishlisted, you can wishlist it. If you haven't heard of these games, Demon's Tilt has been out. You can check that one out.
And wishlisting is kind of following the game in YouTuber terms or whatever, where it's if you get updates or things are happening, it'll tell you.
Now there's a follow button.
No, do that shit.
Which is another metric wishlisting is just it's the best metric. I mean, if you don't have any intention of buying it, don't wishlist it, because some people I think have created a false impression of how their game's going to do because they've farmed wishlist.
Right, yeah. They're buying their yacht and whoopsie, the funds did not come through.
Yeah, so it's just a metric. It's just a number that converts it to sales.
Well, my question is, what I want to know for the audience, because and for myself, is like, can I get Steam to yell at me and say, okay, no, it's early access time now, Mark. Just a reminder, we're in Steam. It's like a giant rabbit hole of random crap we're always playing. I mean, things get lost in the shuffle. So if you wishlist it, will Steam message you and say, oh, it's time to get it now or whatever?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's why it's powerful, I think, is it because it gets to people's email. But also I think it's powerful because, again, like the Steam base is an enthusiast. If they're putting it on their wish list, they're not bookmarking it. I mean, some people use it like a bookmark, but not really. I mean, they really do have an intention to buy it. But yeah, I'm just happy to reach your audience. I think they're relevant for the kind of game I'm making.
I would hope so. Yeah, it'll be really cool when it comes out. I'll play it and stream it and try to learn how to play pinball properly. I still suck at it, but maybe this can be the game that teaches me to play pinball correctly. Well, awesome. It's been really cool having you on, and I'm really looking forward to XENOTILT, so I'm going to keep an eye out for the updates and early access.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
See you, everyone.
Bye.
So thank you to the $5 patrons, 100, Accepting Panda, Admiral Coconut, Anhold, Alexander Pfeiffer, Anthony A, Arcade Hell, Arrow Viper, Auto Named, Beam Pit, Bo, Ben, Beto Dames, Boghog, Borgie22, Brian Shiver, Chase Palumbo, Shadow Maltese, Chris Yusufovich, Chronic Burnout 3, Claricliff, Climby Coyote, Coast, Color Boy, Cooksand666, Cook Some Soup, Corey Mark, Des Audio, Dan Chi, Darren Griffin, Dave Hansen, David Crespo, Delta Tango 6, Dick Jones, Dingo, Disco Stas Leia, DJ420 Praise It, Dr. Boss Key, Elias Alonso, Evan Serafet, FCK, Fiskin, Frames Per Human, Francisco, Full Set, Game Boy Guru, GPM, Hausu, Jake Ryan, JLab, JBRPG, Jink Hans, John Kelly, George Sand, K Horse, K2, Contain, Craze the Boys, Low Casting, Mieshba, Malaise, Mars Bar, Matt O'Leary, Maz, Megadeth 859, Minung, Michael McCord, Mitchell Y, Moonro, Nathaniel Davis, Neon Dagger Games, Okalookuls, Pedro Perez, Psycho Blizzard, Queen Charlene, Raul, Real Skeen, Retro Schmupper, Riff Mason, Rolf015, Scanline City, Sebastian, Seesaw FW, Shazzy, Shmup Junkie, Sirapong, Biters STG, Steady AI, Steve Fiction, Street Magic, Superfunk, SW1335, Tamzarian, Takaramucho, Taze, The Boot Rex, The Dirty Screech, The N1, The Old Bensta, Tony Latundula, Toho Rizardi, TRM, Sugumo, 2YU, Twilight EX, Unikoi Roots, Ursula, Ushi Mushi, Vic Viper, Beautiful, Wabby Legs, Yosef, Zachary Patton, and Zeal.